It's lights out today on November 15th for the RLR Podcast. We have a great lineup of topics today. I'm Nick. That's Matt. And away we go. We'll start off with Recharge today, Matt.
How's it going, guys? I think I got a couple things to bring up to speed on that we found really cool. I think Nick saw something. We guys were talking last week about Porsche and why we like it, and just it was a Porsche episode, right? Well, there was something interesting Porsche did right after that. I'd like to think that we had a hand in it a little bit. Maybe they were listening.
Possibly, yeah. So Porsche decided that they were going to release all of the marketing images for their concept cars over, I believe it was the past
Mm-hmm.
it was over the past week on their Instagram page and their Facebook page, but more so it was the prototypes and concept cars over the past 5 or 6 decades.
Mm-hmm.
Some
Saw a
of
couple.
which,
Saw a lot of stuff come across our YouTube channel. They had
yes,
a lot of good videos there.
yep, they had some videos on there as well. Very interesting designs.
I mean, yes, as typical of Porsche. Some beautiful, some not so beautiful. It is what it is. The
Yeah,
Germans, yeah, I think with Germans, they either make it, surprisingly beautiful or rather typically German.
yes.
But I like to think that we had a hand in that, last week, and they're once again social media game is on point. So Porsche, well done. If we had a hand in that, let us know.
Please, podcast at redlineresorts.com. please let us know. Another thing that Matt noticed this week, Costco.
Maybe for everyone, first off, for everyone who doesn't know what Costco is basically a large whole wholesale store where you can buy. You could go to the grocery store and buy your your Wheaties or your toilet paper in a pack of 2. Well, you can go to Costco and buy your Wheaties in a pallet and a pack of 62. So Costco is a wonderful place. Great food court. It's kind of like a.
It's like a big box. It's a wholesale big box store.
It's like a cult class. It's like a cult following behind Costco and Sam's Club in the U.S. especially. But the nomer for Costco is that they sell everything, and usually everyone says they sell everything, right? Well, no, not Costco. Costco sells not only your standard electronics, they sell caskets in case you had a loved one die. You can get your oil change there as well. But officially now they are now selling a Wheels Up membership for $17,500.
Now, for those of you who don't know, Wheels Up is a private jet charter service. Private jet chartering has been blown up over the past 5 to 7 years, especially since the downturn in the economy and people who have private jets that don't
Well, and
necessarily.
even we could see an uptick because of COVID, and people not comfortable flying commercial, so they don't want to charter flights or do private, or at least something a little more private than commercial, And
Right.
Wheels Up, I would say Wheels Up and NetJets, I think, are the two, most hotly contested players in that field right now. But I just find it hilarious that at Costco, you can now buy a Wheels Up membership for $17,500. And for those wondering, what do you get for that 17,500? You actually get not only the membership, but you also get, what is it? Let me see if I can find the article here. You also get with that a $3,500 Costco shop card and $4,000 worth of flight credit. So good bang for your buck there from Costco.
Yeah, another thing to note for those of you who are not aware of the private jet world, the Wheels Up membership does not give you free private jet services. You still have to pay for those private jet services. You just have access to those jets for that $17,500. Hence, what Matt said with the $4,000 in flight credit. They significantly reduce the cost of your charter for that private jet. However, it is still about the same price as a first class commercial ticket.
Mm-hmm. But still maybe a little bit safer than flying commercial. All in all, I mean, look, Costco forging new grounds, forging past there, quite literally keeping true on you can buy everything at Costco.
Yeah, it really is.
Quite literally something I never thought you would actually be able to buy at Costco, but I don't know how they did
I
it.
used to go to Costco just to buy the rotisserie chickens because I feel like those are
good stuff.
fantastic. But now that I know that I can go there for also my luxury daily needs, such as tires on the Porsche in my garage, which I don't have, and the my charter jet service needs, and I believe the last time I was in Costco with a friend of mine, we saw a diamond-studded Rolex for right around the price point of $150,000 in the case, ready to go
at Costco.
at Costco.
Probably right next to a Square, a Square or a $20 Timex.
Not too far away from that watch. No, it really is. You can buy anything at Costco. Yes.
For those wondering, you can find this on looking here. You can find the Wheels Up membership within their electronics category online. So go check it out.
You do need the Wheels Up app to be able to use your membership, though. That is by far not a sponsor, just something that I wanted to make note. And felt like it needed to be said. For those of you who are not familiar with the Wheels Up NetJets, private jet charter services of the world.
Yet another reason to love what a great partnering in on-demand jet travel. Much like you could think, what are some other iconic brand duos besides Costco and Wheels Up?
or if we're talking about legitimate great partnerships, then you could also say that that goes very well with our Porsche Embraer 300.
Exactly.
From last week.
As amazing as peanut butter and jelly, Costco and Wheels Up. What a great pairing. Well, Can't wait to see what comes out of the future. Moving on down through. Let's get out of recharge here. Last thing is a congratulations to the Suzuki MotoGP team for their championship.
Yeah, definitely should be noted, as we talked about last week, that there were some challenges and some points deducted, some pretty significant penalties to some of the other teams that had been in first place. But
Yamaha engines.
Exactly, but for Suzuki to take that the MotoGP championship, congratulations to them.
Yep. Slide on into paddock chat here, a little bit more in detail. And something I found kind of fun. My as viewers may know, listeners, Lamborghini is kind of my poster, my child's bedroom, poster car, as it were, even over Ferrari. And I found it hilarious that there was this article that I found over the past couple days. I'm gonna see if I can't go make sure I don't get it wrong, from Jalopnik. And what did you call it, Nick? The Italian organ donor service?
Italian organ transplant team.
Well, it's because essentially the Italian police used what looks like a Lamborghini Huracan to transport a donor kidney 300 miles in 2 hours. So if you're in Italy, looks like you can you have the police with their Lamborghini Huracans to deliver your much needed life-saving organs and all that stuff very quickly. So I found it funny. You definitely wouldn't see something like that here in the U.S. You gotta love the Italian police, right?
Just as much as you gotta love some of the cars in the Dubai fleet.
Oh, it's a separate thing that we talk about later on. I mean, yeah, that's an otherworldly fleet that they have. Jeez.
Yes.
I'm hope that they have a helicopter by now, or like one of those jetpack things for officers. Jeez.
So,
wouldn't surprise me.
Funny enough, I was saw a video from the International Chiefs of Police show last year, where they had the hover bike, the 4-prop motorcycle.
Wasn't Dubai getting
it was in the Dubai police booth at the International Association of Chiefs of Police.
Nice.
That they had just had someone literally just flying around inside their booth in the thing. But they had to put up so many barriers because that thing literally will cut someone's head off. It's 4 giant blades.
Why waste time for arresting someone? You could just fly over them and cut their head off. I mean, there you go.
So, great segue with your words there, Matt. You know what can fly
Oh God.
from Dubai to the United States in a single trip?
Be that dangerous.
No. I'm going somewhere. I've got to connect the dots here. So from Dubai to the United States, there's 2 planes that I think of. You've got the Boeing 747 Intercontinental, and you've got the Boeing 787 Dreamliner. But another Boeing plane has made the news lately. I'm so sorry for this transition. It's the best way I can get there. And you put 787 in there. We're actually talking about the 737 Max.
Yeah, I realized that after I put that in there.
Well, we were both talking about the Dreamliner. It's a gorgeous plane that we both have traveled business class on, and it's
a fantastic ride.
Yes,
really. But the news on the 737 Max is probably around the world by now. Remember, back in January through March, safety issues and the entire fleet of Boeing planes was grounded, pretty much throughout the world, right?
Yeah, for those who don't know, basically what had happened, and I would say between the two of us, I'm probably a little bit more the aviation nut. But 737 MAX 8s and 9s were having an issue where on takeoff, the automatic system and the autopilot would try to correct the course if it felt you were pitching up too fast to prevent a stall. But the pilot couldn't override that setting, and unfortunately, we had 2 very fatal accidents with that airframe, and it was grounded. It still is grounded. However,
across the world grounded.
Grounded across the world. The FAA immediately put out their statements. International travel agencies from Canada, the EU, pretty much everybody grounded that plane.
Yep.
It really tanked.
Boeing
stock.
It tanked all kinds of Boeing stock and other companies. I mean, the Southwest Air, the majority of their fleet, I think, is 737 Maxes anyway. So, I mean, not to mention
majority of their fleet are 737s, but the Maxes hadn't been fully rolled out yet. They did ground a significant number of the Maxes, and I don't know how many of them were actually in service, but it was somewhere in the range of maybe 10 out of their hundreds of airline fleet. So,
but it looks like there might be some good news on that front where, I think we're reading right, Nick, within the next week or so, there are new certifications pending with the FAA that might allow that plane to go, be certified to fly again. Now, that's not to say that we're going to be seeing this airframe flying regularly like it used to, COVID or not, right? Within the next week. What I was doing research on, that's just FAA certification to fly again, but then there's tons of software updates that have to be done across the entire fleet, essentially, around the country, around the world. Pilots have to be retrained and recertified with the FAA to fly. So assuming everything goes according to plan, that airframe might just very well be, starting to turn the corner out of the catastrophe that it's been in since January of this year.
Yeah, and American Airlines and Southwest have both said, American Airlines being the largest air provider in the world by both fleet size and number of passengers transported, but Southwest Airlines being the number 1 budget airline operating in North America and the Northern Hemisphere, quite honestly. Both of them being that the 737 MAX 8s were such a huge piece of what was supposed to be their fleet this year. Both of them have said if the FAA can get those certifications done this week, they may have customers traveling on them by holiday time, so end of December. However,
essentially they're leaving like the next weeks to couple of months to recertify and pretty much sort things out. So I would say potentially by the end of the year, we could see that airplane flying again. Now, interesting other thing about the paddock chat here with that is, with the relationship between I think the FAA and other world aviation certification agencies, right? Where I think typically, it used to be before COVID, before this incident, and so, I mean incidents isn't really putting it properly maybe, but the FAA was kind of the ruling guide, in a lot of other, even like at least smaller agencies around the world and other countries would take their direction from the FAA, right? And now it seems that a lot of those agencies around the world are instead of doing going off of what the FAA says, it's gonna do more of their own independent investigation and certification. So potentially an interesting shift in the world of aviation certification. You know.
Yeah, and I know that the incidences with the Max 8 and the Max 9 both have really changed the way that things have gone in this industry. If you look at just the soaring number of, and soaring pun intended, soaring number of like the Airbus A320 Neos that are being sold right now, with their, in my opinion, better fuel economy, and longer range than the current. I will still say that the Max series is the next generation jet for Boeing. And it should be noted that a 737-800 or a 737-8, or even sometimes shortened to 738, is not a Max jet. So a lot of people will get on to, and I had an experience like that earlier this year before the pandemic, where I was getting onto a 737 and someone read the safety card and saw a 737-8 and had a very long, very frightened chat with a flight crew member about, are we on a Max 8? And they had to reassure them, no, this is not a Max 8.
It's not the same thing.
So the jet that we were on had been in service for almost 12 years.
Well, frankly, they couldn't have been on.
Well, at the time it had been grounded, but there were still people out there, even after the grounding order, that just, for reasons, and it was, I don't believe there were any in the United States, but there was a couple instances with a couple airlines in Southern Africa and Eastern Europe that, after the grounding order, still had a couple of them in the air. But those were very quickly reprimanded and brought back to ground. And I do agree with Boeing in the way they did it. I think the pandemic helped them significantly, because without the pandemic and the severe cutoff of majority of commercial traffic, I really think that would have destroyed Boeing this year.
Yeah.
And just like Porsche, Boeing has a very special place in my heart, being from Chicago, and you've got Boeing and United's headquarters right downtown Chicago, and being an aviation nut, I do I do really, I have the hometown spirit for them. I like Boeing. For those of you who don't know, I'm also an avid flight sim nut, with all the peripherals and rudder pedal, yoke, all that stuff. And one of the things that I've noticed in at least the most realistic flight models that are out there, I genuinely like flying the Boeing style better. I don't like the fly-by-wire. It freaks me out. And while I am getting used to the A320, being that it's the only one that's available in the new Microsoft Flight Simulator, which is something we can talk about another time. The 787 Dreamliner is also in there, and I do, minus the flaws in the game's coding, I do actually genuinely enjoy flying that plane a little bit better. But That being said, this is this is November 15th. We had a huge F1 race today.
Very interesting.
A very interesting F1 race. Very interesting from the moment the cars were unpacked off the truck to the moment that they got packed back on the truck.
Well, maybe we pump the brakes here and we first say congratulations to Lewis Hamilton on his 7th championship. I believe 4th consecutive.
I believe 4th consecutive, 7th overall, tying Michael Schumacher's record. Yep. And quite honestly, forever.
We'll have to see if there's going to be an 8th based on salary talks and rumors about him. I don't know, maybe hanging up his F1 helmet. So hopefully there will be at least an 8th, but we'll have to see if there will be an 8th next year.
Yes, and it will. I'm not the biggest Hamilton fan. However, you can't deny that he is a fantastic driver, that he has earned those 7 championships, and that he has forever solidified himself in the history books from this point forward. If he ever earned an 8th, he would be just setting yet another history book. However, with him tying Michael Schumacher in almost everything now, I don't know where else he could go from here.
Keep setting those records.
Unless he set another record. At this point, he is the top of the motorsport. Yeah.
Now he should smash the record. I think that'd be kind of fun. But I mean, he had an interesting showing here in Istanbul with starting with qualifying. It was a very interesting qualifying. I don't know if you watched the qualifying, Nick. I saw bits and pieces of course, the end.
Right.
What Racing Point was able to pull out of qualifying.
I did actually watch all the way through FP2, or I'm sorry, not FP2, Qual 2 and Qual 3.
Talk about an unfortunate, just for Verstappen, just not, taking the bull by the horns. Maybe a little bit pun intended.
Yeah, I was about to say, but
I mean, I think there was a photo shared of him just kind of like in a corridor just after the qualifying, and yeah, he did not seize the opportunity. Had he, been in, pole. Sorry, I hit my mic there. Had he been in pole position, I mean, to start the race, it could have been a very different turnout for him and Red Bull. But what an interesting qualifying session, just to set the grid order today.
Well, and I have to congratulate Lance. His ability to handle that car in the wet was an absolute show of mastery. And for someone who has struggled so much this season, he's not a bad driver, and he clearly has a spot there outside of the fact, and I know someone out there is going to go, well, it's because his dad's the owner of the team. Yes, his dad is team principal. However, Lance showed that today
he deserved it.
And especially in that qualifying, he definitely deserves to be able to have that seat.
Well, it was interesting today, and I mean the track conditions were appalling with a literally brand new surface to contend with. Like 10 days prior it was finished, refinished. Plus the weather with the rain and it being cold, cooler outside, and I think they had even washed the track really close to qualifying at one point, and besides the rain and everything else, I think I remember reading an article. Weren't they driving like Renault Clios around the track at one point on like the night before the race to try to get put down some more rubber for grip? Or there was like
there was something similar to that. Yeah, it was. They were just trying to get any kind of rubber they could down on the track.
I mean, add that to the things. It's 20 things you would see in 2020 trying to improve track conditions by driving some normal quote unquote road cars on track just to dry it up, put some rubber down. I mean, and the start of the race too with Bottas. I mean, not what I expected at all. I mean, I fully expected Bottas and Hamilton, where they were in grid order, to shoot out to the front immediately within the first lap or two, and it's not what we saw at all.
And quite honestly, I think one of the major things that this showed was that the current W11, while it did end up taking first place with Hamilton behind the wheel, I don't think that car was well suited for the wet weather.
No.
I mean, I do feel for Valtteri. He really struggled with grip today.
Trouble today. Jeez.
And if you just want a visual representation of how today went, the photo of Lewis breaking down, sitting on the front of his W11, covered in mud.
Yeah, that was another thing I noticed too, is how dirty. I mean, you talk about clean air, dirty air. That's how dirty the cars were. Just the bunch of crap. I mean,
the blackened silver arrows ended up almost being silver based on just the amount of mud and white clay dust that had built up on the cars by the end of the race. They almost ended up silver again.
Mm-hmm. And
so
it was a good race, and I mean, and even I would say that it was an interesting race throughout the entire bit, and then once the track obviously dried up towards the final laps. I mean, I think from like lap 52 on, give or take, 52, 53, the order was pretty much set and stayed the same. Obviously, not a good day for Red Bull. It was a great day for Racing Point. Great day for Mercedes as well.
Well, and we got a podium out of Ferrari for the first time this season.
That was interesting. I am so happy.
I should say for the first time post-COVID season, but still.
Yeah, but I mean, congratulations to Seb. Like with what was it, like the last couple turns that. I gotta find out what turn that was. What turn?
I want to say it was either the second to last or it was leading into the final straight, but Leclerc locked up, and
he tried. I mean, granted, I don't think he was. I don't think you could argue
he was going for the last ditch aggressive move.
Yeah, he was going for last ditch. He wanted. I mean, he wanted to. He didn't want to. He was going for second. He's going for a second podium. I mean, and I don't blame him, but it obviously was a risk, and I think it was great on him to try to take the risk to finish the race in second versus third. Who wouldn't, right? I mean, second's better than you can't kind of get first with a 30-second lead from Hamilton, right? But he locked up his brakes, and Seb took advantage. I mean, and for Ferrari P3, P4, Seb got a podium. How long? I mean, and jokingly set aside, it would happen to be on a day where Binotto wasn't there.
Which, yeah, about that.
Coincidence? I think not. For those what I'm referencing there, Nick and I were chilling on the Formula Dank subreddit before this, and there was some very, very funny instances of that, and just overall recaps and funny posts. Funny just about the entire race in general. It was good. It's definitely worth spending some time on. But be careful. Much like the YouTube, down the rabbit hole, I'll watch one video and then it's all of a sudden and your eyes are bloodshot. I think you could spend a lot of time there if you're not careful, just going down that rabbit hole.
Yeah. So it was it definitely was it was interesting. Well, and another thing that I wanted to touch on today.
Before I think I know where you're going, but let me ask this question before. Did you? This might not be the right question, but did you enjoy it? What I mean by did you enjoy the race is, it was interesting. It was a great race. We saw some great things. We saw some surprising things. I thought it was a great race. That said, though, I found myself wishing it wasn't wet. I know that sounds kind of obvious, but I didn't like seeing the stuff that happened to Bottas or a lot of the issues with grip. I mean, you could name that to the track conditions, to the weather, to the tires, to the whatever. But I like seeing quote unquote cleaner racing, I think. Not that I didn't enjoy it. It's just I found myself longing for sun, for dry track with grip, different strategies than what they had to play with given the weather conditions.
Here's the thing. And I think that this was a good mental break for the fans. I understand Lewis won today.
Mm-hmm.
It's been bought for how many races now. I do understand the quote unquote podium fatigue that I've seen a lot of people talk about, where it's just the same podium over and over and over again, and just one or two drivers different.
That part I love. I agree with that part. I fully agree with.
Those parts. Before we go any further, I don't know that we would have had a quote-unquote non-wet result on the dries because of the Pirelli tire situation.
Okay.
Watching FP1 and 2, I mean, it was literally like watching
the tire situation mixed with the track situation. Yeah, you got a point. It's almost like it's better that this race was. I would say that it's in part. Sometimes it seems like it, given the tire and the track conditions, minus the weather, right? Might have been better for this one to be a wet race, frankly, so they could stay on inners or wet the entire time.
Well, and being that, and we haven't touched on the Pirelli tire situation yet.
Not yet, but we will.
Well, let's bring it up now so we can dive a little bit deeper into this whole thing.
Let me open this up for us here.
Or
who's getting fired at Pirelli?
Exactly. So for those of you who don't know or are not big F1 fans, thank you for listening to this podcast, by the way. I know this is going to be a long one about a lot of F1 things. However, for those of you who don't know, Pirelli is the tire manufacturer for Formula One racing. Of the Pirelli tire compounds, they are seeded by C1 through C5. C5 being the hardest compound available. When it comes to track conditions, newer tracks or newly resurfaced tracks need a softer compound to be able to grip the road better because there aren't the grooves and things from wear and tear in the tracks. So you usually bring a softer compound. What happened today and this weekend is someone at Pirelli, and someone openly admitted to it, they brought the hardest compounds they had, which essentially made the track dry or wet an ice rink.
Yeah.
So,
which on a track that was already an ice rink, not exactly a good combination.
So we've got the hardest. So we had the soft tires were on compound 3, mediums were on compound 4, and the hards were on compound 5.
You were saying something to me too, Nick. Good comparison to like using Portugal to today. Did you? I didn't hear. Did you explain that?
No. So, for example, Portugal, a track that was resurfaced at the beginning of the race season.
So I think another point of clarification that might lend perspective to Istanbul as a whole. The fact that it was resurfaced like 10 days or whatever before, within 2 weeks, and no other pre F1 race, like no other racing events to kind of lay down more grip and kind of wear away at that brand new, slick surface. I mean, Portugal was newly refinished at the beginning of the year, not the very beginning, but I think.
But they had some track time, and there
still
were
newly
other
resurfaced, a little bit of track, but still in F1 speak, still slippery, something you don't often see from an F1, event,
right, which
let alone at Istanbul where it was nothing happened, and 10 days before. I mean, that's just insane.
And
It's an ice rink.
and
No matter
Portugal
what.
for reference, Portugal, they brought compound 1, compound 2, and compound 3. Compound 1 being the softest, and the softest compound that you can get from Pirelli with the F1 tires, all the way up to mediums on the 2s, and the hards were on compound 3. That should show you that a newly resurfaced track, even one that had been resurfaced at the beginning of the season, was slippery enough that they needed the softer compound. And for those of you who don't know, softer compound is more grip. So though the softer the compound, the more it sticks to the individual grain of the track surface. So
And
in
you were saying
Istanbul,
that the compounds they brought today was C1, 2, and 3, essentially for C1 being for the hards, for the meads, and
opposite of that. So C5 was the hards, meaning the hardest compound that you can get, the least grippy compound, was brought as the hard tires. The middle grip, what was the hard tires, the least grippy tires at Portugal, were brought in as the grippiest tires today. So the C3 was used for the softs.
But am I correct in saying that what you're saying is C5 compound Pirelli has?
I'm sorry. If I got that wrong, I apologize.
I think
C1.
C1 is their hardest compound.
I'm gonna double check this.
I may have misheard, but I thought it's just one of because we're going so deep in the tire stuff. I probably misheard. Essentially they brought what served as their in the end of it. C1 being the hardest, C5 being softest. What they brought to Istanbul for teams was essentially, quite literally the hardest of their offerings, and arguably the most wrong choices. The track conditions.
You know what? I had it backwards in my head. You are correct. So C1 is the hardest tire. C5 is the softest tire. What they brought today were C1, 2, and 3.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, but still, whereas for I guess a good the hard still stands the hard tire. Portugal was the softest tire in Istanbul, essentially, right?
Correct. So
And
back in the 2018 season, for those of you who are F1 fans or not, if you go back and look at the 2018 season, there were 7 compounds of tire from super hard to hyper soft, and it went from light pink to like rose pink.
I missed the light pinks.
Red, yellow, white, blue, and then an orangey tan. What they decided to do with that then is take the hard tires from the 2018 season and make that C1. The hyper softs are C5. So,
in an effort to bring down the, I mean, I kind of missed the rainbow. It makes sense. An effort to simplify teams and spectators. Simplify the offerings.
Yes. So now the current setup is, let's see. Yeah, so their current setup is the C1s are the hardest compound, the C5s are the softest compound. What they brought today, and I'm just verifying that I am correct in this one now, they brought the C1s as the hard tire with the white bordering. Mm-hmm. They brought the C2 as the yellow marked tires, which would be your medium compound. And they brought the C3 as their reds, which would be your soft compound. Now, basically, what that means, and to go back and relate this to Portugal, they brought C5 as the soft, C4 as the medium, and C3 as the hard. The other thing you have to take into account is we had intermediates and wets only today.
Mm-hmm.
The intermediates...
Most of them started on wets, and then I think most finish on intermediates, correct?
Correct. Now, here's the thing. The wets and the intermediates are essentially soft tires with treading.
Yep.
So we're still
Give him
talking.
best chance at grip, but also water.
Exactly. And then obviously the channeling and the actual treading in the tires to wick water away from the inside of the car and to kind of force water out so that the grip can be applied. That being said, we are looking at essentially the hardest tire that was available for Portugal being exclusively used today.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And what we ended up seeing today with
We
Leclerc,
saw what a
with
mismatch in tires could be.
well, definitely what a mismatch in tires could do, but in addition to that, with what Hamilton was able to pull off today, is basically take his intermediate, run it in the wet conditions, all the way down to a slick to what was essentially a soft tire.
Soft. Yep. Basically, take the inners and create softs out of them. And of course, that's why I think in the beginning of the race he wanted to pit, his team wanted him. How'd that go?
Well, towards the end of the race, or
beginning of the race though, he wanted to pit his team. The team
yes,
didn't
and his
want
and
to. And towards the end, for that reason, I think
his team wanted him to pit.
He didn't want to,
and he refused. Yeah,
as the racing line dried up, it ended up that in his complete favor that he had essentially pair of soft slicks. And by that point, the racing line was dry enough to where I think I remember hearing on his radio, like the last 2 laps, they were expecting some rain maybe on some of the corners. Don't think that actually came, but clearly, I mean, it just goes to show, I think you could say that everybody makes mistakes, right? And that's true. I would argue this is an example of why Pirelli and whoever is deciding on what compounds they're supplying races, this is why Pirelli can't screw up. Period.
Well, it became a safety issue because we saw. I mean, literally, it looked like Valtteri was on.
Everybody
an ice
can
rink.
make mistakes, but Pirelli can't.
We saw so many spins, so many,
Well, within the first, out of the first corner. I mean, what was that? It was Bottas and who was the other spin?
Well, it was Valtteri and Carlos Sainz, was it?
No.
No, I'm sorry, not
Sainz. I can't remember. Wasn't it?
No, it was Esteban Ocon. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it was Renault. Yeah.
Yep, because he got. I don't know if it. I mean, it was clearly unintentional, and the stewards marked it as unintentional.
Didn't Williams? Wait, didn't Williams pull something? We're seeing where.
Well, okay, so I was gonna get to this.
Yeah,
Williams started from the pit.
Yeah, but I think I remember I know why they did it, right? Because the leaders of the grid, when they go out for the formation lap, especially on the tires that they had, they lose heat quickly, right? And with the inners at that point they all had, I think, wets on. And as the leader is sitting out there, as the answers or the commenters were talking about, when you get back to the grid after your formation lap to wait for the back of the field to actually take their positions, you could be waiting 40 seconds less or more. By that time, your tires are cold,
Well,
so
in rainy conditions like today, yes, those tires.
It was a good decision. I don't think they were obviously able to capitalize on it given where they finished, but logically, it was a good decision.
Being that Latifi retired and George Russell continues to put up a fantastic fight every single week, and
I like watching him.
He is one to watch. I would say,
next year.
Yeah, he could probably do very well in a Renault seat or a Haas seat.
AlphaTauri?
Maybe potentially.
I could see it. I could see a nice pairing, nice competition between Gasly and him, and then AlphaTauri seats.
I could see that.
Huh.
And
who's gonna keep the second? Who's gonna get the second seat for? Did Albon, as the announcer, Albon, however, I like Albon, but I think I heard a couple Albons today. Did Albon demonstrate enough today. First time a Thai driver has led, an F1 race, which congratulations to him as well for doing so. He performed well today for Red Bull, except throughout the race, except to the end there. But do you think that? I don't think he's done enough to keep his seat yet. I hope he does, but I don't think he has.
Well, I will leave it to the words of Christian Horner when he said it's his seat to.
Yeah.
It's either his seat to. Well, it's his seat to lose, is what he said. He wants to keep Alex, but Alex has to fight a little bit harder. He's got the car.
I think we saw that today, though.
I definitely believe we saw him fighting hard for it was
today. Great. Arguably, I think it was great to see Alex where I expect him to be, frankly, being that second seat.
Yeah. Well, and he complimented Max well today, and that's difficult to say because today was such odd conditions. However,
could you imagine if Max had actually, pulled out a pole position and how much different this race could have been today? Could you imagine?
But again, if Max had a pole position, what's to say that he wouldn't have gotten into a race with, let's call it, Stroll from behind?
Mm-hmm.
And who's to say that he wouldn't have slipped on that outside corner like he did and lost his grip again? I mean,
I'd argue though he was great through practice and qualifying, and offense passes near the middle of the race and a little bit towards the end there too. So who's to say that he couldn't have, quote unquote, kept that up or started that way with a clear field, clean air, quote unquote, out in front? Maybe kept it the entire race. Who knows? I mean, we won't know, but I mean, it's still that by no means undervalues the achievement Racing Point, and I mean, just it was really cool to see, a pink Mercedes as the Formula Dank subreddit like to coin a couple of their, but it was really great to see a Racing Point. And, Seb pulled up right next to the filthy cars that they were, right next to Hamilton. And I think, Seb was the first one to go and congratulate Hamilton, after he.
Remember, and it's hard to remember with the pandemic and this year and this season in general, Seb is a world champion.
Oh, 100%. Five time?
Yes.
5 4.
5 or 4.
5.
I believe he's a 5-time world.
All right,
please look it up. But
Seb deserves it. I'm gonna look it up just to make sure we're right. Hang on, hold your horses.
And to the people who say he's past his prime, I disagree entirely. I think I definitely believe that Ferrari has done him dirty this year. I don't personally believe that Binotto is being honest when he says that there isn't a favoritism over Leclerc.
And I share that opinion as well.
It just, and by the way, the Ferrari pit crew team needs some serious overhaul work.
Oh God.
Why is it that every single time Seb comes in, there is always a front right tire issue? There's always a front right tire issue. Every single time. I never...
4, by the way, to confirm.
It is 4, okay.
I agree, though. It
never
happens to Leclerc, does it?
No, it doesn't ever seem to happen to Leclerc. Or if it does happen to Leclerc, it seems that everybody kind of turns a blind eye to it.
Yep.
But it's frustrating.
I agree with your opinions.
I think Seb coming back to Aston Martin next year. Because and granted it was...
Well, essentially Aston Martin being current day Alfa Romeo.
Aston Martin being current day Racing Point. Is that not?
Oh, you're right. No, I had that. Yep, I had that. Yep, never mind. I was wrong.
So
You're right. I had those lines crossed.
so with that, I mean, is it going to be a green Mercedes next year? Ultimately, what it appears to be is that the quote unquote pink Mercedes that we saw this year, BWT, I guess, has decided to discontinue their sponsorship with F1, and the presenting sponsor of the car gets to choose the color of the car.
I'd like to see Aston as the presenting sponsor. Correct.
Correct.
I would like to see, being an English company, I'd like to see the car in British racing green.
Oh, they have decided that already. It
Thank
will
goodness.
be British racing green.
I know that a long time ago I was fascinated with the various racing colors of each country, and I don't remember what they all are, but I gotta say, even being in the U.S., British racing green is my favorite out of countries' racing colors.
Yes, British racing green. Yeah, it will be a very interesting year next year. Seeing an Aston Martin, almost an Aston Martin green at this point, because it's British racing green, but it's, in all honesty, when has another car really donned that color besides Aston Martin?
Not often, or at least be memorable.
Well,
I'm looking here
because Lotus had the black and green, or I'm sorry, the black and gold.
Mm-hmm. I actually found, I think, a color dye. I'm not sure if this is still apparent, as this is 2014, but it looks like Argentina is blue and yellow, Mexico is gold, Switzerland is white and red, Brazil is yellow, Netherlands orange, Finland white, Spain yellow and red. Makes sense from their flag, right? Portugal is red, Canada is white and red. Go figure. Egypt, I did not know, was purple. Poland is white and red. Sweden is blue and yellow. Japan is white and red, and Australia is green and gold. Now, the ones that we all, I guess, like the key players here, the UK, United Kingdom, is British racing green, which still is my favorite, frankly. The US is, as I did not know, but now it's coming back to me, is imperial blue and white.
I did know that, and that's part of where Red Bull got their color scheme from. Is
France is bleu de France, makes sense. Italy is Rosso Corsa, which makes sense. And Germany is white or silver, and silver, arguably. I gotta say though, my three favorites have got to be Germany, the U.S., and the U.K. But that British racing green, I mean, you mix a little of that. I mean, we're talking about stupidly mixing colors, right? Mix a little of that Germany silver with the the UK British racing green, or maybe that the US Imperial blue and white with some Germany silver. I love those. I love those combos.
It is,
but you can't beat the British racing green. I mean, throughout history, you just in current day, you can't beat it, man.
Well, and I believe every one of Aston Martin's top end vehicles has always been able to be purchased in British racing green.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to. I'm looking forward to Seb's transition back there next year. I would agree with the statement that he is not, quote unquote, washed up or old hat. Although what I would also argue is a switch back there is not going to be something that unlocks his potential. I think it's going to come down to a combination of the car. He's going to need the team behind him. He's going to need a great car, but he's also going to have to, I think, to kick it into overdrive here. He's going to have to,
I mean, if what is now Racing Point just steals the W11 for next year, then you'll be fine.
Let's not say that.
Because they did it this year. It's just a W10. That's the reason they call it the Pink Mercedes.
Yeah, it'll be good. I'm looking forward to see how. Obviously, not all the driver lineups are set for next year. Looking forward to see more of these from those praying down. Hey, we might not even have Hamilton next year for all we know. So
yeah,
we'll see.
The world of F1 will
Interesting.
be a very interesting place next year, as will
As will the rest of the actual world.
as will the world and especially the world of Formula E. But
Mm. I am looking
it's
forward to get back into FE here. It's Formula E is something that I feel like it was robbed from me right as I was getting in. It got stolen from me,
yeah,
right
well,
as I
I
was getting
agree.
to love it. It got stolen from me this year, so I'm looking forward to having that back. We'll see.
Yeah, and it's interesting that we only have 3 races left in the
Yeah,
F1 season, and almost
we'll
everybody
see
else
how
is
they shape
wrapping up.
out.
Yeah, almost everybody else is wrapping up their seasons here. So,
So
uh,
let's keep making sure that counts, keep enjoying stuff, and we'll see how things shape up for next year, right?
exactly.
Across the motorsports world and anything, and as we see, through the end of this year, we'll see how the aviation industry changes. We see how, the motorsports. We see how we want to hit something a little bit more on water. Good, maybe a thing to hit, would be like I don't know, like cruising industry.
Yeah, well,
Maybe something on water.
you are definitely much more in tune with the I'll say the commercial cruise industry as well as just the uh, what would you call it, the
Watercraft.
watercraft industry
Yeah,
in
I
general.
think I focus so much on. I have to get much like NASCAR, get back into it. I focus so much on like commercial cruising because I've recently been on a lot of cruises and I've really found that I love it and I like not just the vacation aspect, but I love the technical. I love how they make floating cities. I just love keeping an eye on that kind of stuff. So maybe I'll take a look at that and just bring up some topics on later shows here.
Yeah, especially as I mean, like we've been saying, the racing seasons are dying down. What do we look to? Well, is
There will certainly be no shortage of pontification in the motorsports, aviation, or watercraft world. So
no, and the question that I have, I guess, is are we going to see more in the esports leagues during the winter now that esports has become so mainstream and
mm,
popular?
good
Are
point.
we going to see Leclerc in a banana suit driving his Ferrari around the track in F1 2020, the video game, or are we going to see?
But one can hope, right?
I really do hope so. Some of the I went back today and I was looking at some of the older memes that came out when the whole esports league was going on,
Hmm.
and the dress up days that they did, and the insane. I can't remember if it was Leclerc or Gasly who said that it's a very different feeling when you win a podium in an esports league and you throw your hands up and you cheer and then you turn around and stir your pasta
I
instead
don't
of
remember who said that, but that's
instead
hilarious.
of shaking and instead of celebrating with champagne, I turned around and stirred my mac and cheese, and that was it was something as simple as that. I went, you know what, that kind of really describes the world right now, and
That's
that was
2020.
a while ago. I mean, that was from oh geez, that was back in June, I believe. I mean, that
That was
was
back. Who knows? It was definitely back at the game.
it was quite a
Shut me
while
all down.
ago. Quite a while
Well,
ago.
we'll definitely see we have some time for actual live actual motorsports versus e motorsports, right? So we still have some time. We'll enjoy it. We'll keep giving you guys our opinions on it, and you know, let us know if anything you think we should talk about. Reach out to us, right?
Yes, definitely.
Well, what is there anything else you wanted to hit today?
Um,
Tonight, today.
Not much else on the actual schedule, but we still have about 15 minutes worth of time to fill. So I'm wondering if is this something that we want to go back and touch on? Maybe is there something else that we had from last week that didn't make the cut?
Didn't make the cut. I don't know. Maybe. We could talk about. You wanted to talk about. I think Lewis being more than a driver. You were talking to me about
Yeah, I
last
can
week.
I can kind of go deeper into that.
You were giving me some pointers. I'm not quite following where you're going, but maybe you can lay a groundwork and like give my opinion on it.
So, long story short, and we'll stick with the F1 topic, I guess, for this show, is really seeing Lewis Hamilton being more than just a driver this year, being more than just the F1 driver, the big F1 driver, and kind of the way he was. I mean, he really became where Mercedes said he found his voice this year. He always had his... Toto said something along the lines of... he always had his foot, but now he's found his mouth, which he said it in German, which I guess would roughly translate to, he always had his driving ability, but he's now found his voice.
Yeah.
He got really big into the activism this year. He was a style icon, wearing, I believe it was to Monza, or might have been Monza, when he wore the pink Burberry bucket hat and matching day suit, while also having sunglasses on his dog. I know that, and people were like, oh, now he's a style icon. He's more than just a race car driver.
Is that to say something like, I think I know where you're going with this. Is that not something that, like, he might not have been known for in the past, but arguably, like, it's expected, though, being top F1 driver, figurehead. It was more weird that he didn't do stuff. I would say, like, maybe it was more weird that he didn't do stuff like this before.
It was more interesting to see that he popped up on YouTube for that specific outfit, popped up on such YouTube channels as, or it could have been YouTube or podcasts, such as James Charles and Beauty Gurus and some of the other larger like makeup and fashion channels, where they were just saying, oh, look at this guy, not look at this F1 driver. It was, look at this guy who happens to be an F1 driver.
Yeah.
So it was kind of this, is he, and some people would argue, is he bringing the sport into the mainstream, but is he bringing it in too late now that there is a decent amount of controversy over F1 being still gasoline powered versus Formula E, and something that we were going to dive deeper into in another episode was the whole sponsorship issue.
Well, actually, one thing that I think we did have on today's was wind tunnel stuff that I was reading about.
Yes. Well, you know what? So let's finish up this short Hamilton topic. But basically, what people said was he was kind of becoming more than just an F1 driver. People were recognizing Lewis Hamilton as, a speaker and a figurehead for a specific movement. Versus,
I'd say it's a good thing. He's, these celebrities, quote unquote, in various fields, not just athletes or motorsports, F1 specifically. They have platforms, so ideally, now more than ever, you'd like to see them using their platform for specific reasons, for good reasons, right? So the fact that he's found his quote unquote voice, I think, is a really good thing. And should he not continue hopefully he does, but should the rumors be true and he not continue after next year, it's going to be really interesting to see what he does then with his platform. Maybe he's started to truly use his brand and build on his brand with his voice, and we'll see where that takes him. Maybe, come obviously in the future, in or outside of F1. As right. F1 in general just starts to look outwards more, I think, with driver salary caps, making the sport more approachable, environmentally friendly, and so on.
Right. So, I think, no, I definitely agree. I think it's a very good thing. I think it's bringing more people the attention to the racing industry in general. it was just interesting. Should the whole point that was brought forward, and obviously you just gave your opinion as, should these drivers be more public figures than just race car drivers? You could take, okay, let's take Albon, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Will Albon ever be more than just a Red Bull driver? Will he ever be a public figurehead, a household name, and someone that people look to for current events and issues? Probably not.
Mm-hmm.
Hamilton has gotten to the point now where he's been in this industry long enough, and he's been driving for enough time, and has accomplished so much in that process that he is becoming that household name where someone might go, well, I wonder what Lewis's take is. You know, what is his take on this? So that's not
Arguably, that comes with more responsibility.
It definitely comes with more responsibility, and I think you have to manage that stewardship better. And one of the things in that is looking at the sponsorships on the F1 cars. And I know we were going to save this for another time, but I think we should just make note of it.
Really quick.
Yeah, we should make note. F1 has had, and actually Donut Media had a really good video on this as well.
Not sponsored, no connection with them, but they have a fantastic video explaining the situation.
But long story short, F1 has had a very tumultuous history with sponsorships. Most recently being, Rich Energy was a huge one, but most recently was the Mission Winnow on the back of the Ferrari cars, which ended up being just a landing page for Marlboro cigarettes and the Philip Morris Corporation.
Yep. Essentially, what it comes down to is socially and environmentally, they're making all of these strides with environmental rules and driving the sport more approachable for new entrants and blah blah blah, both for spectators and teams and I can't think of the word, but partner manufacturers and so on. But it also comes with vetting the names they have on the sides of their cars, where previously it hasn't been done. So it might be fixed. Obviously you would think it'd be obvious, right? The FIA, then I think the FIA should, if there's a new sponsor potential or potentially a new sponsor for any team's car, FIA does an investigation to see if they're a legitimate business or not, before their name goes on the side of the car. I mean, it's not that.
Well, yeah,
different. It's not that big of a deal, and it would mean a lot and go a long way in terms of shoring up the tumultuous history of some of the sponsors that have been on through and not just Rich Energy, but there's been fake Nigerian princes with their company on the side of the car.
There's been so much in F1. There's been Nigerian princes. There's been scam artists. There was the Rich Energy, which people say actually exists, but nobody's actually seen a can of Rich Energy ever. Even the people who work for the company are like, yeah, we don't even know what it looks like. You've got Mission Winnow and all the different ways that Philip Morris and Marlboro cigarettes have tried to sponsor cars in the past, specifically since they had such a deep-seated foundation in F1. I mean, between the Ferrari cars and the McLaren cars back in the day being
back in the heydays.
Yeah, the McLaren cars for a while, the only sponsor they had was Marlboro cigarettes.
Yep.
So,
it's definitely something to fix. Something to look into. In addition to these drivers having a greater platform, we should have a bigger platform, and in part does, and that also comes with greater responsibilities. Now, I think that maybe the transition to the last thing here was the wind tunnel stuff that I find really cool. I think arguably F1 trying to go more not carbon neutral, but more environmental change in the world and so on. You have Formula E that competes on. Obviously, that's part of their MO with being all electric and producing their own power on grid and so on and blah blah blah. And one thing, I think after the Portuguese Grand Prix, F1 officials, FIA officials, whatever, sat down in a room or whatever, and what are we going to make the sport more approachable? What are they going to change? And brought up as a suggestion or an idea is to ban wind tunnels. Because and you might be wondering why that matters. Because I think in terms of F1 cars, I don't think there's been an F1 car that has been made without a wind tunnel since like the or like early 2010s or like 2010 or something like that. I think I remember reading. So it seems normal to use a wind tunnel to make a car, but in the spirit of environmentalism and climate change, there's a lot of resources. I don't even know the full scope of it, but the more you look into it, there's a lot of energy that's needed to operate a wind tunnel and to keep it going, let alone the amount of hours to design a car and every year for the past like 10 years. So one thing they're thinking about is and another way to expensive, right? Energy cost is to make it also more approachable for teams. And I think it's a good idea because of the alternatives. Um, Toto made a comment that I think it is the only hard part, and the other you might ask, well, what is the what's the placeholder? What takes the place of wind tunnels? Because you can't just you know make these things out of clay and send these fastest cars in the world around, right? But the answer is computational dynamics, where essentially using computers and to do the same thing a wind tunnel does, but it's not quote unquote real life. There's far less cost, energy used in with computers and all the programs, and I think it's a good idea, frankly. I don't know if you have an opinion, Nick, but I think the only hesitation I have is what Toto said, where you don't want to not have a wind tunnel and actually see how these different wings and these different parts in the cars are going to react, and then the testing actually happens when you put a driver in the car, and then their safety's at risk because you're actually for the first time in real life with real wind, real downforce, testing it then. So I think the stipulation might be that if they ban wind tunnels, it'll be by 2030, and that should give teams time to boost up their their CFD analyses and their computers to get to a point where they can create cars fully in these systems and in this way, and not have it be and actually understand how the cars are going to react. You know what I mean?
Right.
I think with that stipulation, with that time benchmark, to give them time to build up this newer,
It's
less used
building
technology.
the ability to have a simulation data that's so advanced and so
To
accurate that you
replace the
don't
need for wind tunnels.
exactly.
But there is a safety part. I agree. There is a safety part. Wind tunnels is these cars have the most downforce and the fastest cars in the world, and they are dangerous. And you don't want to do everything theoretically and then stick a driver in it and put it on track and see what happens. So I think it's a good idea. I am in favor of the idea, along with if they don't do it immediately, it's like by 2030 to give teams time to adapt, to adjust. You know, in the means of you know advancing the sport, in the means of advancing the environmental impact, reducing that impact of the sport. And you got to think about it too. Wind tunnels have been around for forever, right? The computational fluid dynamic stuff is new, and F1 is supposed to be the cutting edge of technology, right? So even more argument to start using this stuff more prevalently among the teams, I think.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree, and it's interesting. I don't know about banning wind tunnels within the next year. I think,
Oh heck no, heck no,
but
no. Giving
overall,
banning within a certain time horizon, I think.
I could see that giving them a time period and having them adjust to that. Same as with any other major rule changes, you know, like
Mm-hmm.
voting on it now and having it be something that's 5-6 years in the future, like when they went from having the screaming V12s to the V8s now to the V6 hybrid systems. It's you know
Yeah.
it's definitely you need time to
Yeah.
elapse there. But
Yep, and arguably, I mean, they give him time, but I think it's. I like seeing all. Because I like seeing, you know, as fans, we don't want we don't want it to stay stuffy. We want it to change. We don't want to see the same podiums and the same finishes. And arguably, I'd even like to see a time where it's the best, just the driver with the best skill levels that finish high on the podiums or finish number. Now it seems it's so much so it's whoever has the best car wins. Period. And I'd like to see it back. I like to see it back in the old days where the cars were kind of whatever they were, and you had to be a really good driver to get the most out of your car to win, over anybody else. Whenever it comes more to driver skill than just how great the car is. And maybe Racing Point's a good example of that, where copying Mercedes' car last year, you see the benefits that their team is having. Now, they have great drivers. I'm not saying that they're not, but you also can't argue that is also a lot of that is also due to the car. Right. And while these machines are the pinnacle of technology in automotive, racing, automotive technology, I also yearn for just plain raw driver skill. Frankly, put them in like a 15 horsepower electric engine with an open seat and a steering wheel and two wheels, and just let them go around a go-kart track. Let's see what happens. Give me the exact same carbon copy,
and
I want to see
that's
what
how a
happens.
lot of these drivers are forged, is on the go-kart tracks, the karting tracks of the world. So,
or it's skill, and not that these drivers, all of these drivers, no matter if they're in a quote team or Mercedes or not, Red Bull, Mercedes, Renault, McLaren, whatever, they're all the best drivers in the world, arguably currently. But I think be careful with all the innovations of technology, and the cars getting better and better and safer, whatever. We also don't want to step too far away from, needing driver skill. So,
right.
You know what I mean?
I do.
We'll see. Well, anything else? Anything else?
Nothing else
on your mind?
Nothing else at the moment.
All right. Well then, everybody, thanks for tuning in. With that, that's a checker flag on. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure to check out our social media accounts at Redline Resorts on all social media platforms. And if you guys have any questions or any suggestions rather, on things to talk about, or you want to interact with them, feel free to shoot us an email at podcast@redlineresorts.com. With that, I'm Matt. That's Nick, and we'll see you guys next week.
See you guys.